Your point is that human brains are different than animal brains.
Not necessarily better, just different.
Yeah, different. And that's a vitally important to realize. And there are certain things that we can't assume, therefore, that just because we share certain behaviors, that we share cognition. And you point out that therefore there's no evidence that animals have feelings, more or less. And I guess what I want to ask you is, you make it sound like it's Occam's razor. Since we don't need to assume that animals have feelings to see their behaviors, even if it looks like when my dog looks sad or embarrassed, all the things that make me impute emotion to and I'm going to always do that because that's
I do too. I pet my cat, he purrs.
Absolutely. Now, is that really Occam's razor, or is it also another way of thinking of Occam's razor to say, well, I don't need to assume it doesn't.
Right.
I don't see why one is more. I mean, what is true is we have no idea. Mm-hmm. And I guess I want to ask you if you think we'll ever know. I can't imagine an experiment. Right. I'd like to ask you if there are any experiments you could ever imagine in principle that would allow us to know. But I mean, is there anything other than saying it's a matter of opinion right now?
Well, so, I think here's the thing. When I'm in the laboratory, I have to adopt certain principles.
Sure.
When I go home, I don't have to have that hat on. I'm a pet-loving person. I'm not a scientist. And I think that's true in life, that, there are situations where we need science and other times we don't. In fact, it's not very useful. It's been said that anthropomorphism is an innate feature of the human brain because it was useful for our ancestors to treat animals like little people, use them they lived with cows, and the cows were part of their life, and they were partners in farming and all of this.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see it being evolutionarily useful, but I guess the question I'm having is, just because it's evolutionarily useful doesn't mean it's wrong.
Doesn't mean it's right.
Exactly. It doesn't mean it's right. I think the point that's vitally important in your book is it doesn't mean it's right. We shouldn't assume it just because behavior is separated from emotion. And you've really converted me there, or at least illuminated for me there. I don't know if I had an opinion one way or another, but that behavior and emotion are two separate things. Just because they are, it doesn't mean it's right. It doesn't mean it's wrong. And I'm totally agnostic, even after reading your book, that to say that animals don't have feelings.
I don't say that.
Okay.
I say I don't. There's no way to test it.
Do you imagine? Can you? That's absolutely right.
And I go home and I pet my cat.
Okay. So the question is, can you imagine if you had? Forget infinite resources, but infinite technology.
No,
can you think of any way
it's just like a methodological hurdle that no one has an answer to.
And the stumbling block is language. With humans, you can ask them what they're feeling and thinking. With animals, you can't.
Right.
Is that basically the fundamental difference?
It's a little more complicated. A human can respond verbally or non-verbally to something that they're conscious of, but can only respond non-verbally if they're not conscious. Mm-hmm. Animals only have the non-verbal mode of response. So there's nothing to fractionate the other states with. So, I personally believe that animals have feelings and are aware.
Oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
But not as
a scientist.
Not as a scientist. As a person, I believe that.
Yeah.
Now, Marion Dawkins, who's at Oxford and a professor in the animal behavior department there, was a student of Tinbergen, and she's a very well-respected person. But her thing is animal welfare. And she makes the point that tying the problem of animal welfare to the problem of animal consciousness is really bad because we can't prove animal consciousness. So it just brings controversy into the thing, and it's actually harmful to animals to tie those two things together. Of course, we have to treat animals in a proper way. We can't just be cruel and horrible. I mean, there are standards in every nation that I know of that for research, and you could say, well, the research shouldn't be done. So that's a social question that we all have to address. And I think, valuable findings come out of animal research. But that's not the question of animal consciousness. That should be separated.
Well, I guess I always thought that the criteria was feeling pain, whatever that means.
Well, that's so complicated.
Yeah.
Because
okay, maybe it's difficult.
You see a dog that's been hit by a car, and you see it writhing and making noise. Those are reflexes. I mean, you're not seeing its pain. I think that dog is feeling pain, but that's not what you're seeing.
Okay,
and
good.
that's why it's so complicated.
It is very complicated. And that actually has implications in our society for legal things having to do with things like
But
abortion.
there's no answer.
We should exactly. I think but that's a very important point. We will hear people say certain things should not be allowed because I believe X,
Right.
and it's just a belief.
Right.
That we shouldn't assume is there because, and sometimes it's motivated by a religious belief, and therefore it's irrelevant, in my opinion. But that's me. But it's really important. I think your point is, if we're going to think about how to behave, we should try at least. We think what's useful to us, but we should also think about what the science tells us at some level.
Right.